So one of the dependencies I like to add to my projects is New Relic. The New Relic 1 product handles, I think, 100 megabytes per month for free. So, for any little project that I'm doing, which is most of my projects, then it's free for me. And it's a really great tool. It gives you a lot of information about how your systems are running, and you can see any errors that come through. Um, I recommend it. And so then we look on the deb dependencies. Chai and Mocha are both used for testing. I think I showed some of the testing suites in the previous video. Nodemon is a way of running Node, but have it in a monitoring status so that when you make any changes to your files, it'll restart the server. Very handy. So I also put that right into my start script, Nodemon app.js. This way, as I'm developing, it'll automatically update anytime I make changes. And then Supertest is also used for testing the API. So it's like end-to-end testing from the API down. I use that for the majority of my testing, actually. I don't do as many unit tests as I probably should. ESLint, that's a great linter for JavaScript. I'll show you the settings of that at some point here. All right, so let's, what should I look at first here? We've got New Relic up here already. So I'm saying down here in the error collector, these are the status codes, the HTTP status codes that are acceptable. Anything else is considered an error. I'm ignoring my health route. Let me just move on to some of these other things. The Docker ignore file, this is a list of directories and file types that are ignored by Docker, so they're not copied into the Docker distribution image. So I don't want to pass in any other dot files, and I don't want to send my Terraform in. I don't want to send the function, and I don't care about lambdas and blah 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 blah. All this stuff, like, it doesn't need to be released with my code. So you want to set up a .docker ignore file if you're using Docker for your releasing. Editor config is a cross-editor, cross-platform editor style configurator. It's like a poor man's version of ESLint. So you can see here, yes, in the space and tab war, I side with the tabs. We can argue about that later. Tab width would be 3, maximum line length 120. It fits very nicely, and I don't want, just for reading purposes, I want to go any further than that. I do use line feeds rather than curve return line feed. It's like the Unix and Mac standard that it's kind of taken over the world to a large extent. I do want a final new line, and I want it to be inserted if I forget to add that. That's this line right here. You see how it has nothing but the new line character there. And trim the trailing white space. Yes, make sure we have it so that we don't have any ending spaces at the end of our line. Weird things happen if lines don't match up that way. So for Git, there's a Git ignore file. Again, you want to put in anything in here that you don't want to be checking into your repository. When I want to check in my videos or the Terraform files that start with .terraform, those are like setup files, and anything that starts with the word Terraform underneath the Terraform directory, I want to check those in. Anything else that's in the Terraform directory, I do want to check in, so I want to make sure I get those separated out properly. Well, let me take a look at some of the other things over here. First, packages, extensions, things that are installed that well, actually, you know what? I'm not going to necessarily go looking at them. Let me just talk about the ones that that I like to use and have installed. There's a color info that shows the color of the hex codes in the CSS. Let's come over here, CSS style. You see how that brown is actually showed right here. It shows you what that code looks like. So say if you see 654F3A, what is that? Oh, well, that's this color brown. Oh, okay. So it's a nice tool for Editor config is also, I mentioned that earlier, that's an extension, so you can include that so that it enforces that standard, the dot file that I was showing you. You have to include the module into VS Code in order for it to enforce that. The indent rainbow is handy. It shows colored, like see how this is yellow, yellow. I guess I have to look at a different file to show you what it looks like for other things, but yeah, see how it's yellow, pink, like as you go, as it indents, and then blue, like it picks different colors as you go in, as you indent various layers, levels. There's IntelliSense for CSS. There's the MySQL syntax module, the one Monokai theme, PowerShell, toggle case, and then there's a module for Vue, VUE, for Vue.js files. Okay, so that's what I basically use for VS Code settings. All right, let's take a look at in more detail about the ESLint file, ESLint RC. So I support ES6 and Node. So you say, okay, it kind of tells the environment we're working in Node here, and so you want to set that true. Let's see. You can enforce all sorts of things here. I mostly keep a lot of those off. No magic numbers. I say it's allowed. You're allowed to have a -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anything more than that is going to warn, hey, you're not supposed to have these numbers like bare in the code. You should make a variable for them otherwise. 120 characters, I mentioned before. You want to make sure that you have some sort of limit and you're warning people, hey, your lines are too long. And don't put more than 2 statements per line. I feel like there was something else that was worth mentioning in here. There's one that says, yeah, no evals. One error on that. No undefines. No unused variables. That's handy. There's another one that talks about you don't want to use var when you use let or const. There's that one. Anyway, you can read up about ESLint online. I don't need to go through all the details. It's a handy tool. I recommend you have all your JS files linted. Back in the package JSON, you'll see there's some settings for Nodemon. There's Nodemon config right in the settings of package JSON. It's restartable with an RS. You just type RS while the thing is running, and it will ignore changes in any file that's under these directories or ends in MD. And then I put in a delay that says, okay, just because I've made a change, that doesn't mean you need to start right away. Like maybe I'm making more than one change. Just give me a break here. So for 2 seconds, I can do more than one change. That's probably not long enough, frankly, but it's okay. So the last subject we need to talk about as far as setup goes is probably the Google Chrome developer console. So you use control, I'm sorry, is it? Yeah, it's function 12 on the Mac. That brings you to a view of various parts of your HTML, as well as you can go look at the console. This says I'm not logged in yet. All right, I've skipped ahead to the part where I've already logged in, and this just shows some of the things that happen on the console. And there's a nice feature in here called preserve log, so that will show you what's happening from page to page. So let's say you want to start a new list here. New. And I add. See, it says it puts in show modal list 1225. And just like it actually shows you the logs of what's happening in the JavaScript here in the console. And then there's a network, which shows you the the contents of what's coming back and forth between the server and the app. So this is saying I'm going to be grabbing the list HTML, and then I'm grabbing Vue and Axios, the libraries, which probably already had cached. No, I didn't. It looks like normalize and style I had cached, but for whatever reason, those were not cached. Anyway, some of this stuff is cached, some of it isn't. But anyway, the point is I get to see the response that comes back from the request. Say, okay, this is a request for list 34, and I got back, here it is, it's viewable, it's called new, blah, 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 blah. Here's all the data that's coming back in the response. So it's handy to look at. Again, this is the network tab. And you can also take a look at your sources, and what is actually being pulled in here. And then also elements. I like the elements because it highlights, I can see, okay, that's what my container looks like. And then I have a div inside of that, and then a span, h2, another div, small tag, a table down at the bottom, etc. And you can actually highlight and see where things are on the page. And I believe down here, as far as layout goes, well, let's just click on this one. I can go look at the size of that div, and then I can look at what size padding and border and margin that I have there, and then what color and things like that. So all the different CSS attributes, I can see what's been computed, and I think, yes, I can see the hierarchy of how that summary of what the cascaded style sheet looks like. So when I say cascaded, I mean it's all the parts that are hierarchy of from one file to the next and from one scope to the next, because it's kind of hard to explain. So here's the HTML at the top of the document and what attributes it has. And then here's the ones that are added in by the body, and here's the ones added in by the div. So you can see how the hierarchy of styles come into this. So that's basically it for part 2 of the setup video.